You've been working on yourself, growing, evolving, becoming a better version of who you used to be. But instead of celebration, you're met with resistance. Instead of support, you encounter sabotage. Instead of encouragement, you face guilt trips about how you've changed and you're not the same person anymore. The people who claim to love you most are the ones fighting hardest to keep you exactly where you were. They call it loyalty. They frame it as caring. They disguise it as concern for your well-being. But Machiavelli understood what they're really doing, using emotional manipulation to prevent your growth because your evolution threatens their comfort, their control, and their sense of superiority. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. Everyone can see that you are changing. Few can feel secure enough in themselves to celebrate that change when it means you're moving beyond their level of development." Let's explore why the people you've outgrown will fight your growth, and why expecting loyalty from them is not just naive, it's emotionally dangerous. Machiavelli spent his life studying power dynamics, and one of his most unsettling discoveries was that people often prefer to see others fail rather than succeed beyond their own achievements. He observed that when someone in a social group begins to excel, evolve, or improve their circumstances, the group's instinctive response isn't celebration, it's elimination. Not physical elimination, but psychological and social elimination, designed to restore the previous hierarchy and comfort level. When you outgrow someone, you're not just changing yourself, you're changing the entire dynamic of your relationship with them. You're shifting power balances, challenging established roles, and threatening their sense of where they stand in relation to you. Machiavelli wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than to be loved." But he could have added, "It's far more dangerous to be growing than to be stagnant, because growth makes you a threat to everyone who has chosen to remain where they are." Let's examine how this dynamic plays out in different types of relationships. Family dynamics. Your family has specific roles for everyone, and your growth threatens the entire system. If you were the screw-up, your success forces everyone to question their own choices. If you were the caretaker, your boundaries force everyone to take responsibility for themselves. If you were the quiet one, your new confidence disrupts the family's power structure. Friendship circles. Your friend group has established hierarchies based on who's successful, attractive, intelligent, or accomplished. When you begin to excel in any of these areas, you threaten the existing pecking order. Friends who were above you suddenly feel insecure, while friends who were below you feel abandoned. Romantic relationships. Your partner fell in love with a specific version of you. When you grow beyond that version, becoming more confident, successful, emotionally healthy, or independent, they often feel like they're losing the person they knew. Instead of growing with you, they frequently try to restore the familiar dynamic. Professional networks. Your colleagues and industry contacts are comfortable with your current level of competence and influence. When you begin to exceed those levels, you threaten their relative position and security. They may sabotage opportunities, spread doubt about your capabilities, or exclude you from important conversations. Social communities. Your social circles, religious groups, or hobby communities have implicit rules about who belongs and how much success or growth is acceptable. Exceed those limits, and you'll face subtle and not so subtle pressure to return to your previous level or leave the group entirely. Machiavelli understood that these responses aren't personal. They're predictable psychological reactions to disrupted power dynamics. He wrote, "The nature of man is such that people consider themselves put under an obligation as much by the benefits they confer as by those they receive. When people have been used to feeling superior to you, equal to you, or needed by you, your growth forces them to recalculate their sense of self-worth. Rather than do the uncomfortable work of examining their own choices, most people find it easier to undermine your progress. This is why the people closest to you often become your biggest obstacles when you try to improve your life. They don't hate your success because they're evil. They resist your growth because it forces them to confront their own stagnation." Machiavelli identified several tactics that people use to disguise their sabotage as loyalty. Concern trolling. They express worry about your new direction. "Are you sure this is healthy? I'm concerned you're changing too much." This doesn't seem like the real you. They frame their discomfort with your growth as care for your well-being. Historical loyalty appeals. They remind you of your shared past to guilt you into maintaining the status quo. "We've been friends for years. After everything we've been through, I can't believe you're abandoning what we built together." They use history as a chain to prevent forward movement. Identity policing. They insist that your growth represents a betrayal of your true self. You're losing yourself. Success is changing you. You're becoming someone you're not. They reframe evolution as deterioration to make you doubt your progress. Catastrophic predictions. They forecast doom if you continue growing. "You'll regret this. You're going to end up alone. This won't make you happy." They use fear of future consequences to discourage present improvement. Moral manipulation. They frame your growth as selfishness or betrayal. You're being selfish. You're forgetting where you came from. Success is going to your head. They use moral judgment to shame you back into your previous role. Nostalgic anchoring. They constantly reference the good old days when you were different. Remember when you used to. You were so much happier before. Things were better when. They use nostalgia to make your current growth seem like a loss rather than a gain. Machiavelli observed that these tactics are particularly effective because they exploit your genuine care for the relationship and your natural desire to be loyal to people who have been important to you. But he also understood that this exploitation is precisely why you must learn to recognize it and resist it. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." The people trying to prevent your growth see your evolution as abandonment, betrayal, or arrogance. They don't experience it as what it really is, natural human development that has nothing to do with them. Your growth doesn't require their permission, and their comfort doesn't require your stagnation. But here's what makes this dynamic so psychologically complex. Some of these people genuinely do care about you. Their sabotage often comes from real attachment, not malicious intent. They're not consciously trying to harm you. They're unconsciously trying to preserve a version of reality where they feel secure, valued, and superior. Machiavelli understood that this makes their resistance even more dangerous, because it's harder to recognize manipulation when it comes from genuine emotion. A calculated enemy is easier to defend against than a loving friend who unconsciously needs you to remain smaller than you're capable of becoming. This is why Machiavelli emphasized the importance of what he called necessary ruthlessness, the willingness to prioritize your own development over others' comfort, even when those others are people you care about. He wrote, A prince never lacks legitimate reasons to break his promise. While you shouldn't break promises lightly, you also shouldn't feel obligated to keep implicit promises to remain unchanged when change is necessary for your growth. You never promised to stay the same person forever. You never agreed to limit your potential to maintain others' comfort. You never committed to sacrificing your development to preserve their ego. But people will act as if you made these promises, and they'll use your sense of loyalty to enforce agreements you never actually made. Machiavelli's insight was that recognizing this manipulation is the first step to freedom from it. Once you understand that their resistance to your growth is about their psychology, not your behavior, you can stop taking it personally and start responding strategically. Here's what Machiavelli observed about navigating relationships during periods of growth. Expect resistance. Don't be surprised when people close to you react negatively to your positive changes. Their resistance is predictable and has nothing to do with whether your growth is good or necessary. Don't justify your evolution. You don't owe anyone explanations for becoming a better version of yourself. The more you justify your growth, the more you validate their belief that your development requires their approval. Ignore predictions of doom. People who are threatened by your growth will always predict negative consequences. Their predictions are based on their fear of change, not accurate assessment of your situation. Maintain boundaries around your development. Your growth is not up for debate, negotiation, or group consensus. You can listen to feedback, but you shouldn't let others vote on your personal evolution. Accept that some relationships won't survive. Not every relationship is meant to last through every phase of your development. Some people are meant to be part of your story for a chapter, not the entire book. Machiavelli also warned against one particular trap that growing people often fall into, trying to bring everyone with you. He wrote, "The wish to acquire is in truth very natural and common, and men always do so when they can. You might wish you could help everyone you care about grow alongside you, but growth requires internal motivation that you can't provide for others. When you try to drag people along who aren't ready or willing to evolve, you often end up compromising your own progress while failing to inspire theirs." Machiavelli understood that true loyalty sometimes means accepting that people are at different stages of development and allowing them to be where they are while refusing to return to where you used to be. This doesn't mean abandoning everyone who hasn't reached your level of growth. It means distinguishing between people who support your evolution even if they're not evolving themselves, and people who actively resist your evolution because it threatens their comfort. The first group deserves your continued loyalty. The second group deserves your compassion, but not your stagnation. Machiavelli wrote, "It is much more secure to be feared than to be loved." In the context of personal growth, this means it's much more sustainable to be respected for your boundaries than to be loved for your willingness to limit yourself. People who truly care about you will ultimately respect your commitment to growth, even if they initially feel threatened by it. People who can only love you when you remain smaller than your potential were never really loving you. They were loving their ability to feel superior to you. But Machiavelli also understood that this process of differentiating between genuine supporters and disguised saboteurs is often painful because it forces you to see some relationships clearly for the first time. You might discover that people you thought were your biggest supporters were actually your biggest limitations. You might realize that relationships you valued were actually based on your willingness to play a diminished role. These realizations can be devastating, but Machiavelli believed they're also liberating. He wrote, "Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great." When you're truly willing to grow, the difficulty of disappointing people who need you to remain stagnant becomes manageable. You stop expecting loyalty from people you've outgrown, and you start building relationships with people who can appreciate the person you're becoming. This shift in expectations changes everything. Instead of feeling guilty for your growth, you feel proud of your evolution. Instead of apologizing for your progress, you celebrate your development. Instead of trying to convince people who are threatened by your success that they should support you, you find people who are inspired by your growth and want to grow alongside you. Machiavelli observed that people who successfully navigate this transition often go through predictable stages. Stage 1. Confusion. You can't understand why your positive changes are creating negative reactions. You try to manage others' feelings while maintaining your growth, often exhausting yourself in the process. Stage 2. Guilt. You start to believe that maybe your growth is selfish or harmful. You consider slowing down or reversing your progress to restore harmony in your relationships. Stage 3. Anger. You realize that others are trying to manipulate you into staying small for their comfort. You feel betrayed by people you trusted and supported. Stage 4. Acceptance. You understand that their resistance is about their psychology, not your behavior. You stop taking their reactions personally and start responding strategically. Stage 5. Strategic relationship management. You learn to maintain appropriate relationships with people at different levels of development while protecting your own continued growth. Machiavelli believed that reaching stage 5 was essential for anyone committed to long-term personal development. You can't grow continuously while constantly managing others' reactions to your growth. At some point, you have to choose between your evolution and their comfort. The people worth keeping in your life will ultimately choose your evolution too, even if they need time to adjust to the changes. The people who consistently choose their comfort over your growth are revealing that their loyalty was always conditional on your willingness to remain inferior to your potential. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities." The present necessity for you is growth. The present necessity for them might be maintaining familiar dynamics that make them feel secure. These necessities don't have to be compatible, and their incompatibility doesn't make either of you wrong. But it does mean you have to choose which necessity you're going to prioritize, your growth or their comfort. Machiavelli would say the choice is obvious. Your development serves not just you, but everyone who will benefit from the better version of yourself that you're becoming. Their comfort serves only their need to avoid confronting their own potential for growth. Stop expecting loyalty from people you've outgrown. Start expecting resistance and develop the strategic thinking necessary to navigate that resistance without compromising your evolution. The people who are meant to be part of your continued story will find ways to support your growth, even if they can't match it. The people who can't support your growth were never meant to be permanent fixtures in your life anyway. Your loyalty should be to your highest potential, not to others' need for you to remain smaller than you're capable of becoming. If this exploration of growth and loyalty resonates with you, subscribe for more insights into the psychology of personal development and the strategic thinking required to protect your evolution. Share in the comments. Have you experienced resistance from people close to you when you tried to grow? How did you navigate the conflict between loyalty and personal development? Remember, outgrowing people isn't betrayal, it's evolution. And evolution is the most loyal thing you can do for your authentic self.